So PwC, one of the big four accounting firms but also a massive player in the consulting industry, and they have lots of great opportunities for graduates just like you wanting to get into consulting. So in today's video I'll be talking about the different types of consulting graduate schemes you can apply to, but I'll also talk about the general application process you're most likely to experience, the pros and cons of working for a place like PwC, and I'll also give you my top tips on maximising your chances of securing that offer. So given that you've clicked on this video, I'm assuming you know who PwC are, but what you might not know is just how big their consulting section is. In 2019 it was estimated that they earned over $12 billion globally from this section, and that is more than all of McKinsey, BCG and Bain. So as a graduate, what consulting schemes can you apply for? Well, there's the standard management, strategy, technology consulting, but there's also things like economic consulting or sustainability and climate change consulting, and that's quite interesting. I haven't seen that in many different places. So if you want to go into a more specialised area straight away but still in the consulting sphere, you can definitely do that at PwC. Now all of the schemes come under the main name of PwC apart from the strategy consulting, which actually comes under a subsidiary company still owned by PwC, but it's called Strategy and. So if you're looking for the most generalist form of consulting and more similar to MBB, then I'd focus on Strategy and, but a lot of the time you can actually apply to both Strategy and for strategy consulting and PwC for management, technology consulting or one of the other ones, but I would check with HR at either firm just to make sure you can actually do this. So now let's talk about the general application process you're most likely to experience at PwC. And before you start applying to any consulting firm really, you should really nail down what you're going to do in the process so you can start planning right from the start. And for PwC, it's quite a standard CV cover letter before doing some logical, numerical, verbal reasoning tests, those sort of aptitude tests. And then you have the infamous PwC's game-based assessment, which I'll talk about in just a second. And then you might have some phone or video interviews before partaking in an assessment centre or just some case-based interviews. Like I said, this is a fairly standard application process, but the PwC's game-based assessment is something quite different. So let me explain what that is. It's a series of mini-games that aim to test your ability at certain things. So for example, there's a game where you have a series of balloons and you need to blow them up and then sell them. The more you blow them up, the more they're worth. But the caveat is that if you blow them up too much, there's a risk they pop and remain worthless, and your goal is to make as much money as possible. Now this may seem strange, and it definitely did the first time for me, but it's a way of them understanding how much of a risk taker you are without simply just asking you, do you like to take risks? So you may now be asking yourself, how can I do well at this? And unfortunately it's not the easiest thing to prepare for, but what I would say is research the different types of games, think about what they're trying to assess, think about what PwC want to see, and then use those two things to really guide your strategy. So for example, in the balloon game, we know that that's trying to assess risk, and PwC, I imagine, want people that aren't too risky, but also don't just play safe. So think about that and use it to optimize your strategy. So now that we've looked at the general application process, let's have a look at some pros and cons of consulting at PwC. Now from online research, mainly looking at reviews from glassdoor.co.uk from people that worked in consulting at PwC, these were the common things I found that people liked and didn't like. The first pro is that they are very well respected. So if you did want to move on after a couple of years, then having that name on your CV is quite a good thing. Secondly, the people there are smart and passionate about what they do. So just being in that environment with those people will really help to develop yourself and all your skills. Firstly, the pay is lower compared to competitors like MBB. Now I'm not sure of the exact wage, I'm sure it's still pretty good, but this is what people that work there would generally say. Secondly, it's hard work. Now I think this could be said for most consulting firms, but people are generally saying that don't expect the 9 till 5 if you want this job. So if you do want to work there, you've got to be willing to work quite hard. So if you've made it this far in the video, then I'm sure you are seriously considering a consulting graduate scheme with PwC. So here are my top tips to help you. Firstly, do your research on PwC. Make sure you really understand who they are and what they're looking for. So when they ask you questions like, why do you want to work for us? You can give a really good answer and they can see that you've taken the time to research them and know that this is the right opportunity for you. Secondly, work work hard. I know that may seem obvious, but PwC is an incredibly competitive place to receive an offer from, and me just saying that will hopefully prompt to you that you do need to work hard. So don't just rock up to each application stage, make sure you prepared thoroughly in advance and do lots and lots of practice. Thirdly, be yourself. I see a lot of people when they get an interview at a very big professional firm like PwC go in and just try and be too professional and end up coming over quite boring and uninspiring. You need to understand that in consulting, they work in teams, so your interviewer is not just looking for someone that's professional and clever, they're looking for someone that they would want to work with. So don't be afraid to potentially crack a joke or something like that. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you want more firm-specific videos, then let me know in the comments. But for now, I wish you all the very best of luck with your consulting applications.